Okay, so let's try to unpack this. We all get the thrill of setting a record, right?
Hmm.
It feels like this core human drive to, run farther, lift heavier, solve something faster than anyone else. But what if that whole champion mindset, that relentless pursuit, actually governed everything?
Everything.
I mean, absolutely everything from global politics right down to how you blink your eyes.
Yeah, that is pretty much the bedrock of the source material for this deep dive. We're looking at a very specific address from 1979. It's by Reverend Sun Myung Moon, and it's titled Record Setter of History, The Ultimate Marathon of Faith.
And the thesis here is it's absolutely sweeping. The entire philosophy of life is framed as a series of intense, rule-based
Right,
competitions.
and not just a game, a competition.
It covers sports, of course, but then it expands to political systems, nations, and ultimately, the religious life itself.
Right. And that's what's so fascinating, the way the competition metaphor just immediately expands beyond the stadium.
Yeah.
The source material sees the entire global rivalry between, say, democracy and communism as a competition with heavenly rules.
With God as the referee.
God is the ultimate judge and referee, yes.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to pull out some of the surprising, sometimes radical, and often, frankly, bizarre claims that are made inside this framework, all about discipline, freedom, and what the ultimate purpose of religious ambition really is.
We need to find the rules of this higher level game.
That's it.
And the rules, as this source lays them out, they start with the most basic truth of any competition. It doesn't matter if you're an Olympic athlete, a country, a political party, you have to strictly follow the rules.
Absolutely. The analogy that's used over and over is the runner on the track. You could be the fastest person on earth, capable of shattering the world record.
Yeah.
But if you step off that track, if you cut across the field instead of running the curve, you're disqualified instantly. Random action in this worldview is completely useless if you want to win.
So it's not about how clever you are or how much you want to change the game. The rules are absolute. And the source argues that ignoring them is just.
Futility, total futility. But it doesn't stop with explicit rules like legal codes. It moves into something much deeper. This idea of a law of common sense, a universal optimum law.
Okay, this is where it starts to get really interesting because it insists these laws govern things we don't even think about.
Things we consider totally automatic or insignificant. It's not just the written law that matters, but the single optimum way of doing absolutely everything.
Give us the micro examples. This is where it gets wild. What does this optimum law actually look like in practice?
The examples are just astonishingly specific. So, for instance, there's an optimum way to use a spoon. A spoon. You use it right side up. If you do it upside down, it doesn't work. You spill, you look foolish. That's a tiny natural law you follow without a second thought. Same thing applies to blinking.
Blinking. Seriously.
Yes. There's no law that says how often to blink, but nature has an optimum rate. You blink too much, you can damage your eyes. You never blink, you also damage them.
Huh.
The optimum way of sitting, the optimum way of dressing. In every single aspect of daily life, the source claims there's a single best direction.
So the core insight here then is that the law it's not there to harass you or restrict you.
Exactly. It's not meant to be restrictive.
It's more like an instruction manual. It's designed to guide you to the ideal situation. If you resent the law, you're just. You're rejecting the best possible outcome for yourself.
That's it. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the philosophy argues that any successful law, natural or societal, is always seeking that optimum path. It's based on, the accumulated patterns of history that benefit the most people. It's the highest form of common sense, just codified.
Okay, so if a law applies to something as small as a spoon or a blink, how does it apply to something as big and volatile as human freedom?
Well, that brings us right to the paradox of discipline and true freedom.
The address makes this observation about American behavior, this is back in 1979, arguing that many people suffer from what it calls excess freedom, that they're freedom crazy.
Right. And the source argues that this belief in sort of freedom without any prerequisite leads to lawless lives. People disregard fundamental authorities, parents, teachers, basic social norms. The claim is that this is a huge misunderstanding.
A misunderstanding of what freedom is.
Exactly. People want the glory of freedom, but they resent the process you have to go through to get it.
This idea of excess freedom is pretty provocative. I mean, isn't that premise totally at odds with the whole idea of Western democracy? The very idea of prizing individual liberty before obedience.
It addresses that tension head on. The argument is that liberty without an optimum direction is just chaos. and the only true freedom is the one that's earned through fulfillment.
Okay, say more about that.
The central paradox it presents is that real human freedom only comes after you've fulfilled the requirements, by triumphing within the law, not by breaking out of it.
So freedom isn't a starting point. It's an earned reward.
Precisely. Think about it like tough school requirements. You might feel totally imprisoned by homework, required reading, lab time. You see those rules as just pressure.
Sure.
But the liberation, that feeling of achievement and mastery, that's the true freedom. And it only comes when you fulfill those requirements. You're released from the system because you've conquered it.
And the source really emphasizes the consequences of ignoring this. It says that disregarding these natural laws, like thinking you don't need your parents' guidance or can ignore your community, it leads to eventual destruction.
For nations, families, individuals, it's a universal principle of survival through adherence. And that adherence is what defines true moral character, especially for a patriot. A true patriot, it argues, has to be a law-abiding person who gets the spirit of the law. That underlying optimum principle, not just someone who memorizes a clumsy legal code. That focus on the optimum path is what lets a nation truly set records and thrive.
Okay, so we've covered the individual law, the spoon, and the national law, the patriot. Now we have to escalate the competition. If the national level is the state championship, what's the ultimate global marathon?
The source material identifies the ultimate competition as religion. The argument is that, just like the marathon is the central, toughest, longest event in the Olympics, life also has a central race.
And the criteria is that it requires going the longest distance against the toughest odds.
Exactly. And when you look at all the arenas of life, philosophy, sport, culture, which one has been running the longest?
Faith.
Faith. The text points out that Christianity has been talking about the second coming for 2,000 years, and who knows how many more years it will take. So the religious arena, just by its nature, involves the longest, most enduring distance. It's the ultimate marathon.
And the rules for this marathon, they're described as being incredibly stringent, far tougher than any athletic code, and often, well, they seem to go against common sense.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the requirements.
Yeah.
Fasting, enduring intense suffering, practicing total humility, avoiding temptations that seem perfectly natural. The source even quotes Jesus' saying,
Whoever would save his life will lose it.
"And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." The text calls this a dilemma that most people just can't put up with.
It's the ultimate paradox. To win the race, you have to be willing to destroy your own self-interest first.
Precisely. And the source argues that people look like slaves under these rules, but God imposed the toughest rules for a reason. He has to select a champion who has triumphed in the hardest arena of all to make sure the champion commands universal respect.
But if the race is 2,000 years long, there has to be some kind of crisis of direction, right?
Yes, the address says mankind has suffered so much harm in religious pursuits because religion hasn't provided a clear map. There's no clear goal, no pinnacle.
People are just running without a finish line.
Exactly. The material uses this tragic example of Korean climbers who died on Mount McKinley. They reached the top, but they didn't have a successful plan to get back down. Without that map for the future, the whole effort was wasted.
Which brings us to Section 4, where the Unification Church basically steps in and claims to have that map. They say they are the ones setting the new record.
Right. The source asserts that the UC alone has inherited the past more perfectly than any other faith, that it's standing on the foundation of the history of God.
And this is where we get into the really radical claims, which, just to be clear for everyone listening, we are reporting on impartially here.
Yes. The UC claims to know hidden secrets, essential details that weren't fully explained in the Bible.
Okay, what kind of secrets are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about details concerning the what they call dispensation figures. So the key historical figures God worked through: Adam, Noah, Abraham. The claim is that the UC knows the internal details of how God worked with them, what their missions were, and crucially, where they failed.
So they're filling in the blanks, clarifying thousands of years of divine history.
Yes. And maybe the most shocking claim, especially for central Christian theology, is the assertion that Jesus' mission was actually incomplete.
Incomplete how?
That he came to marry and establish a perfect family, not to die as a single man on the cross.
Wow. Okay, that is a massive theological claim that directly reinterprets the entire central narrative of Christianity.
It's huge. And the address acknowledges that. It says these revelations are so shocking that conventional Christians see the UC as heretics, that they sometimes have heart attacks. But the UC argues its view is the most realistic one, based on reviewing past failures and just applying common sense to the divine mission.
And if you have a new game, a new map, you need new rules, custom-made rules.
One specific example of this is financial independence. They contrast the conventional model, the preacher preaches and the congregation pays his salary, with the UC's practice of creating its own money and its own resources. The speaker knows he accumulated many titles and started work in different areas to build that foundation. It means they're running the race on solid ground with a self-sufficient vision.
You mentioned a specific vision earlier, home church. For our listeners who might not know that term, what is the goal of that structure?
Home church is their on-the-ground operational method. It's very decentralized. Members are tasked with taking responsibility for a specific neighborhood, maybe 360 households, and their job is to personally meet, serve, and evangelize every single person in that area.
So it's incredibly intense, localized ministry.
Exactly. It's the polar opposite of a passive congregation just sitting in pews.
Which brings us to the highest stakes of all, the trophy. What is the reward for winning this marathon? The source says it's the love of God.
But the champion's destination is. It's a shocking and really emotional vision. The winner enters heaven, they're searching for their reward. But unlike other champions who might look for jewels or rest or culture, the UC runner is looking for the heart of God.
Wait, I remember this part. The champion enters heaven, expecting glory, and the reward is finding God's heart covered in dust in a storage room.
In a storage room, in the basement of heaven, it says it's covered with dirt and dust from millennia of immense suffering. That vision completely inverts the traditional religious idea of reward and sovereignty.
It really does.
The champion's purpose isn't to receive glory. It's to escort the Heavenly Father out of that basement, to ease his sorrowful heart and liberate him so he can finally sit on his rightful throne. That is the highest goal, the Alpha and the Omega.
So to achieve this titanic task, liberating the divine heart, the address demands what it calls an abnormal way of life and an incredible, unswerving iron will. This is where the micro-discipline of the spoon connects to the macro mission.
Precisely. If you're going to liberate God, you have to master yourself first, completely. Even your autonomic functions. Participants are challenged to be alert 24/7 like a boxer, because the competition never stops. If other people sleep 2 hours, you sleep 1. The standard is 365 days of work a year, with a leadership style that only pushes harder and never praises to build maximum endurance.
And the examples of this commitment, as you said, they become bizarrely specific. It's about conquering every single human habit and instinct.
Yes, the source gives these strange challenges, setting records in odd behaviors like sleeping with one leg up in the air, plugging up your nose to change your breathing, setting a record for the shortest or longest time in the bathroom.
Even changing one's appearance. White people using black makeup and black people using white makeup. Why? Why mandate such detailed, uncomfortable specifics?
The implication is that by subjecting every personal, mundane, even unconscious act to a difficult, self-imposed rule, you build that necessary iron will. You prove that your obedience to the ultimate goal transcends every human comfort and every conventional expectation.
And that internal discipline is then translated into external practical sacrifice, like the fishing industry example.
Right. In that case, church leaders were sent for sea duty for a year and a half, and the proposal was to eat only the leftover, lowest-grade fish and trade all the good fish, to suffer and sacrifice the best product for God and humanity.
And the claim is that by doing this,
by demonstrating that level of dedication, they are covering God with an invisible net. They're essentially making him a prisoner who must then follow their path because he is compelled by their absolute fidelity.
The audacity of that claim, to turn the tables and make God a prisoner of human dedication, it's breathtaking.
It speaks to the ultimate power dynamic in this philosophy. The champion, having conquered themselves and fulfilled the ultimate requirement, can now exert authority even over the divine heart.
And the stakes for this success, they couldn't be higher. The source links the survival of the Unification Church directly to the survival of America, to applying the brake and turning around 240 million people.
And by extension, the survival of the free world against communism. The claim is that this competition is being waged right now,
They're not spectators. They're active runners in this ultimate marathon.
striving to set a record that commands universal respect.
So what does this all mean? The address connects athletic determination, this adherence to natural law, the spoon and the blink radical religious claims about history, and extreme personal discipline under a single unified mandate for record-breaking achievement.
It's a worldview where microscopic adherence to optimum law is the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for macro-level success.
Which is the ultimate liberation of God.
This really raises an important question, though. The entire philosophy hinges on the belief that spiritual pressure and guidance led them there, that they are a remnant. Their extreme dedication, even the abnormal way of life and those bizarre disciplines, it's all presented as the only path to the highest possible authority, the liberation of God. When you achieve that alpha and omega goal, the source claims you just. You occupy all other authority and dignity as well.
So if freedom comes only after the requirements are fulfilled, and the ultimate religious requirement demands this unswerving, abnormal dedication where you have to voluntarily sacrifice every comfort and conquer every instinct, what does this text suggest about the true psychological cost of setting any great record, whether it's spiritual or worldly? That's something to ponder long after this deep dive ends.